that the last and most difficult galus that Am Yisrael will face will be the confrontation with Yishmael here. And he says Yishmael is the most difficult because they are the only one of our enemies that comes with a spiritual power. There's no way to stop it, meaning there is no logical way of stopping people who are willing to die for their cause. But when you have people who don't care if they die, then how are you going to stop them?
In a video circulating on social media, a Jewish student posed a question to a rabbi. The student appeared puzzled about why God grants the prayers of Muslims, whom they consider to follow false teachings. Although Jews don't see Muslims as idol worshippers, they view Islam as a misguided doctrine. The student's confusion was evident in their question. Initially, they recounted their experience in yeshiva, where they learned that Arabs also prayed to God for their success, sometimes achieving it. They added, "Do we have the right to stand before God and ask Him to ignore others' prayers? Should we see this as a prayer competition in God's eyes? They pray good. He grants them success. He helps them to steal, and I think their nus is different than the Asasi. But we learned, and moreover, I remember when I was in, you told us that the Aram are such a difficult opponent because they have certain advantages. They have a certain level of Mila, and they have some version of Kashu. Maybe some people could say they're better with any than we are. So my question is something that I've been struggling with, standing before Hashem, feeling some sense of confusion and discouragement about that. Even though it hasn't been for me, I can imagine someone might feel something as negative as betrayal. To think that the Aram are praying to Hashem for success to hurt us, and we know that they did that. We know that they had success and that Hashem answered their prayers. So how do we deal with that confusion? If we think about it, and moreover, do we even have the right to stand before Hashem and say, "Please Hashem, listen to our prayers, ignore them"? We know that they're saying, "Hashem, listen to our prayers, ignore them." Yeah, and then even more than that, is it really correct to think of this as like an arms race or a counting game between us and them?
My question is about the war. The Gemara says that when the Listim pray to Hashem for success, they pray good, He grants them success. He helps them to steal. And I think the Sephardi Nusach is different than the Ashkenazi Nusach, but we learned Hashem Shomei Tfilat Kol Peh.
Yeah, the Sephardi, yeah.
And moreover, I remember when I was in yeshiva, you told us that the Arabim are such a difficult opponent because they do have certain schusim and they have a certain kasher with Hashem. They have Mila, they have some version of kashrut, they have sniot. Maybe some people could say they're better with sniot than we are. And so my question is something that I've been struggling with, standing before Hashem and tefillah, feeling some sense of confusion and discouragement about that. And even though it hasn't been for me, I can imagine someone might feel something as negative as even betrayal, that to think that the Arabim are, they're praying to Hashem for success to hurt us. And we know that, we know that they did that. And we know that they had the success and that Hashem answered their prayers. So how do we deal with that confusion with tefillah if we think about that? And moreover, do we even have the right to stand before Hashem and say to Hashem, "Please Hashem, listen to our prayers, ignore them"?
Yep, it's a very, very difficult issue. And this is a concept that I admit has given me much confusion and uncertainty over the years. That is the notion that prayer has power. Prayer has efficacy even when it is uttered by a Russia and even when it's for immoral purposes. This is the kayak of prayer. If it is genuine, truly sincere, Rav writes, based on Rabbi Elazar, that the last and most difficult challenge that Israel will face will be the confrontation with Yishmael. This was said in the 1500s, and the Perizotic is even earlier. He says Yishmael is the most difficult because they are the only one of our enemies that comes with spiritual power, meaning Esav represents physicality and brute force. So of course, in the long run at least, Ruach spirituality defeats physicality. It may be a long process and a very difficult process. I mean, we had the Holocaust, but ultimately Ruach will triumph. The danger of Yishmael is a much more subtle danger because Yishmael comes not only with physical brutality, but Yishmael comes with spiritual merits. They are a child of Abraham. They have the kayak of prayer. They have the merit of Brit Milah, which goes back to Abraham. In fact, one of the things that would be very, very funny if it weren't sad is that Jordan wanted to not allow Israeli teenagers to go to Jordan because they said that their lowering the standards of adolescent modesty made the Israeli kids a bad influence on the Jordanian teenagers. Again, it would be funny if it weren't sad. So that raises the question you're raising again, which is very perplexing. Because they have these merits, they can pray for bad things, and there's a certain power in their prayer, a certain power. The reason why the challenge is so difficult is that we have to counter it with a spiritual power that is greater than their spiritual power. The enemy of Yishmael that Yishmael represents is an enemy that cannot be defeated by conventional methods. The enemy of Yishmael that Yishmael represents is an enemy that cannot be defeated by conventional methods. There's no way to stop it, meaning there is no logical way of stopping people who are willing to die for their cause. When they're threatened with death, they say, bring it on. You see, the Nazis, I have to say, at a minimum, if you can say something good about the Nazis, is that they were cowards. So when a Nazi thought he would be killed, he started negotiating. Hitler was enough of a coward that he took his own life quickly rather than facing the consequences. So Nazis were cowards. Cowards can be defeated by overwhelming military force. Mutual assured destruction only works when you either have cowards or, at least normal people who don't want to die. But when you have people who don't care if they die, then how are you going to stop them? There's nothing you can do. So really, the statement that Yishmael is impossible to defeat by conventional military means is even true in a simple political way. There's no way, you do your best, but there's no particular way that you can guarantee anything. So the dilemma is we need spiritual ways of defeating them,